talk about choreography for your class and create a checklist of things to consider, because obviously it's very different to just making up a dance for you and your dance friends. So the first thing I want you to think about is, how old are the students that you will be creating this dance for, either for your weekly placement class or for the group that you've gathered together? And not only how old are they, but what kind of things are relevant in their world? We need to think about that when selecting music. Now, you may like to think of a theme or a little bit of a storyline, or you might just want to create a dance for the sake of creating the dance. And both of those are fine. But you need to think of that in advance, because obviously it's going to impact your music choice. And in addition to that, you need to think about the actual lyrics of the words in the song and whether they are appropriate for the age of dancer that you are teaching. Now, many songs have, you've probably heard of the kids bop version. So if there is a particular song and it might have a swear word in it or something that isn't appropriate, see if you can go on Spotify and find the kids bop version, because what you will find is that they will have replaced the swear word with something more appropriate. But swear words aren't the only issue. Sometimes we can hear a song and we really like the melody, or it really makes us feel something. But when we read the lyrics without the song in the background, it's really not the kind of message that we want to be sharing with a younger audience. So I really want you to think carefully about your music choice, and sometimes even consider just a purely instrumental piece of music, no lyrics to worry about at all. Now, the next thing I want you to consider is what these students can actually do. It's very tempting when creating and choreographing a dance to put all your favorite steps in, or try and show to others all of the things that you know. But this is no longer about you. It's about the students that you are leading. And so you don't want to put things in the dance that are going to make them feel uncomfortable or incompetent. Remember, when your teachers are doing the choreography for your class's pieces, they are trying to show you at your best, and therefore including steps that you feel really good about doing and can do well. And so the same thing needs to be considered for your choreography. If you don't know the children very well, if you've not been able to complete this task in your placement class, then ask them questions. You know, what things can you do? Can you turn? You know, can you do a double turn, single turn? Or if you're talking about acro tricks, ask them what they can do. And then maybe get them to show you so you can see whether it's the kind of step that you want to showcase in your piece. The next thing I want you to consider is, especially with children younger than about 6, is that unlike you, who've probably been dancing for a long time, they cannot move from one thing to the other really, really quickly. Sometimes for particularly preschool dancers, you need to include counts for transitions, that is, going from one thing to another. And a really good example of this is, say if you were working with a group of 4-year-olds and you had them doing little tippy toes into a circle, and then you wanted them to stop and then run into the circle and run out of the circle, then in your dance, you should factor in a couple of counts for that stopping, because otherwise it will be a real mess. So instead of doing 8 counts running around the circle, followed by 4 counts in and 4 counts out, you could do 6 counts running around the circle, stopping on 7, turning to face the middle on 8. Then you could do running in for 3, 1, 2, 3, and stopping on 4 and running back again for 3. 1, 2, 3, and stopping on 4. I use phrases like point your toe, get ready to go. Now that takes 4 counts when I'm preparing students to skip. So example, instead of just getting them to skip straight away, I will say, point your toe, get ready to go, and skipping from the corner or whatever it is. So you need to allow times for those kind of things in your dance when you're working with very young children. Obviously, as children get older, the need for those transitional times decreases, but you do need to keep that into consideration. Another thing I want you to consider is how you are utilising the dancers in your group. If we're looking at this from a teacher's point of view, rather than, say, an actual choreographer who is creating a piece of art for a very different audience, then we really actually need to consider how well we show all of the dancers on the stage. I encourage you not to have one standout student at the front and everybody else is a backup dancer. Because if you go on to be a teacher, this is the kind of thing that can cause some trouble later on down the track. And maybe, and I hope not, but maybe you've experienced what it feels like to be the backup dancer and it doesn't feel great. And so when you're creating your choreography, can you think of different ways that maybe you could, if you've got students in lines, for example, how you could creatively swap over the lines and how you can move the students in and around and through the movements so that everybody gets a little bit of a chance to shine, everybody gets a little bit of a chance to be near the front and show off the capabilities of your students. Remember, not everybody has to be doing the same thing at the same time, and that some of your students do have different skill sets. Particularly in acro displays, there is a variance of what a student in the same class can do. One student might be able to do a back walkover, whereas another may not. And so a dance doesn't necessarily mean everybody having to do exactly the same thing at the same time. You might be able to create different little opportunities for those students that can do things that are a little bit trickier, and then create the same opportunities for the other students as well. Also consider where, if any, this dance may be performed and how that will look. So it may be that this will just be shown in the studio, or you might record it and share it on a video platform. It may be in a theatre. But if you've got students running on and off the stage, if it's just going to be performed in a class studio setting, then that's not going to look really fantastic because there's nowhere for the students to run and hide. There's no wings like in a theatre. So give consideration to that as well, and that maybe instead of a student exiting the stage and then coming back on, that they could perhaps hold a position somewhere or make a tableau with some of the other students if you are not using all the students at the same time. It is possible that you have learned about the different elements of dance. Mostly we talk about space, time, dynamics as the main ones. However, there are more. So in regards to space, here are some questions for you. Have I used the whole stage, or is the dance very much in one spot all of the time? Have I used different levels? Are my dancers always in the medium level, which is the most obvious place that they will be? Or do I incorporate lifts or jumps to get into the high level, or possibly some floor work to get into the low level? And floor, getting into the low level may include something as simple as kneeling down into a position for some of the dance. Have I used changes in direction Do my dancers face the front the whole time? Or perhaps they could face different areas of the stage. And do I try and make different shapes or patterns and floor patterns with the students? If they are always in 3 lines just facing the front, then that's probably not as interesting as if you can get them to move around the stage. In regards to time, we're talking about the timing of the movements to the music. Remember, you don't have to dance for every beat. When you're working as a soloist, when you're creating a dance for yourself, you more likely do. But when you're working in a group, you can play around with the timing. So it might be that half of the group do 4 counts while the other half remains still and pauses, and then that gets swapped over. It might be that every second child jumps up and then bobs down, and then the alternate children jump up and bob down. So again, one half of the group is dancing, one half is pausing. Canon is the most utilized use of how we can vary timings in dances. And I'm sure you know what a canon is by now, but in case you don't, it's where one dancer does the movement followed by the next dancer. And sometimes these canons can be in groups. Imagine you've got 3 groups of dancers on the stage. On counts 1, 2, 3, and 4, group 1 dancers, followed by group 2 on counts 5, 6, 7, 8, followed by group 3 on counts 1, 2, 3, and 4, followed by everybody together on counts 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would be an example of a canon and then unison, all dancing together. And a canon can be 1 count apart, it can be 8 counts apart, it can be 4 counts apart. You can also vary things with the timing of the movement, considering double speed or half speed. Sometimes you can use the same movement a couple of times throughout your choreography, but make it look quite different by varying the speeds. We also look at dynamics, and that is how we're doing a movement. So if everything is fast the whole time, it can be a lot to watch. So it might be that, the majority of the dance is fast, but there's an element that's included within it that's a little bit of a slower tempo. So think about that as well. If your dance is slow all the way through, you'll find even most slow pieces of music will have a crescendo somewhere, some part of it that's just a little bit more not upbeat, but bolder than the rest of it, generally in the chorus. So see if you can listen to your music and think about how that you can mimic that in your movement. And also, if you are working with very young children, use the music to help you. So does it have a chorus? And just as in music, the chorus is the same all the way through the song. And actually, us as listeners really like that because we get to learn that bit, and that's the bit we sing rather than the verses. And it can be like that for your young dancers as well as your audience. So if you've chosen a piece of music that does have a chorus, then think about maybe using the same kind of steps in the chorus each time. You might vary some of the directions, or maybe, only half the group will do it while somebody else does something different down the front. But that can be a really handy technique when you've got, not a lot of time and the students can only remember so much choreography. And so using the chorus can be that thing that comes back and repeats and makes everybody feel at ease, particularly when we're watching as well. And the final kind of consideration in regards to working with the music is not so much the dynamics or the tempo, but you can use the words to help you. Again, particularly with younger dancers, as you start to work with older dancers, you want it to become less, you want your movements to become less of a slave to the music. But with the young one, it's really helpful. So listen to the music, write down the bars down one side of your piece of paper. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then next line, so you'd write 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, and write down so you know how many bars. Then go back and listen to the music again and see if, and follow it as you're listening, and see if there's any key messages there. So it might be jump up, everybody jump up, in which case you'd probably want to utilize that. So if you've written it down, when it comes time to look at your choreography, you can look at that and think, oh, well, on bar 4, counts 5, 6, 7, 8, it says everybody jump up, in which case on counts 1, 2, 3, 4 will probably be bobbing down. And so you can really incorporate that into your choreography ahead of time. Also think about if you are using anything different like props, which is fine if you're particularly doing like a theme or a story. Just give consideration to how your dancers will use the props, because sometimes they can be a little bit more of an annoyance than adding value to the dance. So sometimes they can be really helpful, but other times they can be a bit of an annoyance. So think of if you're going to use props ahead of time, and then make sure that your dancers have them for the entire rehearsal process. You don't want to say, oh, just pretend you've got the hat. And then when it comes time to perform, that all of a sudden they've got the hat and they've never practiced with that, and it all goes, they spend the whole dance dropping the hat. The other thing with using props is you do want to talk to your dancers about what might happen or what you want to happen if it doesn't go quite according to plan, because people do drop things. Do you want them to leave it there? Do you want them to pick it up? What happens if it doesn't quite go according to plan?